Chapter 50. 10 days was nothing to Yang Qin, but he had at least a few dozen talismans in his hands. When he was making talismans, no one saw him, so they naturally didn't know that he had made a few talismans for each of the other elements besides the fire element. After being nourished by Yang Qin's universe treasure nurturing technique, these high-level talismans were much more powerful than ordinary talismans. On the 7th day, Xinda came out of seclusion. His face was full of joy, and his eyes were much brighter than before. Under Yang Qin's guidance and the effects of the 3 qi-nourishing pills, he finally broke through the bottleneck of the 4th layer of qi refinement. Yuan Ting, He Lian, and Gu Kun looked at Xinda with a trace of envy in their eyes. At the same time, they also looked forward to it. Xinda's today might be there tomorrow. The premise was that they could still receive guidance from Yang Qin like Xinda. On the 9th day, the entire Yeshio Manor heard Steward Wang Yuan's excited howl. Following the howl, Wang Yuan's figure appeared in the sky and headed straight for huge Xian. Haha. Just like Sheng Guanfeng, who was halfway through building his foundation, Wang Yuan let out a hearty laugh as soon as he arrived at huge Xian. Junior Marshal Brother Yang, your words have helped me reach the 9th layer of the aura refining realm. Yang Qin came out early to welcome him. When he heard Wang Yuan's words, he congratulated him profusely. It's all thanks to Junior Brother. Wang Yuan smiled and cupped his hands at Yang Qin. Then he saw Xinda behind Yang Qin. After a while, he nodded his head and said to Xinda, Xinda, to be able to improve even further, it is indeed hard work. Congratulations. It's all thanks to young Master Yang's guidance. Xinda hurriedly bowed. He was a servant, so his identity was different from a disciple. Moreover, Xinda didn't dare to take credit. Oh, Junior Brother Qin, your eyes are like torches. Wang Yuan wasn't surprised at all, as if he had already guessed that Shanghai Feng's foundation building should be related to Yang Qin. It's all thanks to Senior Brother's guidance in the past. I've heard about it from Senior Brother. I thought he looked a little like him, so I just said a few words. Yang Qin spoke modestly, but he transferred all the credit to Wang Yuan himself. After chatting for a while, Wang Yuan said, Junior Brother Yang, I'll have someone send you to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa tomorrow morning. Unfortunately, I'm the manager and can't leave without permission. Otherwise, I'd definitely personally send you there. I don't dare to trouble you, Senior Brother. Yang Qin hurriedly said politely and then said, I have a request. I've been using these servants for the past year and want to bring them to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Is it convenient for Senior Apprentice Brother? What's inconvenient about it? Just bring it along. Wang Yuan did not take this seriously at all. Official disciples all had their own servants. Those who were used to working with them would always follow their master. Even if there weren't 10,000, there were at least 8,000. However, he was a bit envious of Xinda's group of 4's luck. Whether it was the 9 Earth Mountain Villa or the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, they both had servants. Some of the servants' cultivation was even higher than the official disciples. These people were originally disciples, but because their aptitude wasn't enough and their future was dim, they became servants. However, because they had cultivated for a long time, they had also reached the 9th level of qi refining and even the peak of qi refining. For official disciples, having servants with higher cultivation than them was a kind of motivation and stimulation, making them work harder in their cultivation. This was also a common method used by all sects and clans. There was nothing special about it. On one hand, it would settle those disciples who failed with insufficient comprehension, and on the other hand, it would teach the new disciples a lesson, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Since Yang Qin asked for 4 servants, when Yang Qin sent them on their way the next day, other than a servant from the 9 Earth Mountain Villa who led the way, there were 2 men and 2 women behind Yang Qin. Meiqing Mountain had always been the territory of Chunyang Palace. The entire mountain range was about 1,000 li in circumference. The 9 Earth Mountain Villa was the place with the thinnest spiritual qi. 9 Earth Mountain Villa was only about 400 li into Meiqing Mountain Villa. The servant leading the way did not say much and only walked with his head lowered. There was only Yang Qin, who was at the first level of qi refining. He could not fly yet, so he could only walk step by step to 9 Earth Mountain Villa. However, when he reached the second level of qi refining, he could refine a few flight talismans or paper cranes instead of walking. At that time, his speed would be much faster. There were no accidents on the first day's journey. They walked at full speed and only stopped after traveling more than 200 li. Each of them sat down to meditate and recover their qi. After resting for 2 hours, they continued their journey through the night. It was already nighttime and the sky was not very good. The stars in the sky were almost impossible to see. Fortunately, the person leading the way was very familiar and there was only one path to 9 Earth Mountain Villa, so they wouldn't get lost. After walking for another 2 hours, when the sky was about to be slightly bright, Xianxia suddenly noticed a trace of strangeness. It seemed that the spiritual qi in the surrounding environment was a bit stronger than usual. A normal person would absolutely not notice such a difference, but Xianxia raised his vigilance. At the same time, he made a careful hand gesture to Xinda and the others behind him. The 4 of them did not doubt it at all and immediately prepared the weapons in their hands. They began to vigilantly observe their surroundings. The servant leading the way in front didn't seem to notice anything and just walked normally. Although he didn't turn his head, he knew what was going on behind him like the back of his hand. The vigilance of Xinda and the others made him very amused and disapproving. This was the territory of Chunyang Palace, who would dare to cause trouble here. After walking another dozen or so steps, a flash suddenly flashed before everyone's eyes. Each of them discovered that although they were still in the same place, the others had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Because they were prepared, Xinda and the others immediately took out their weapons. However, there was no one in front of them and they didn't know where the enemy was. Xianxia stood in the same place and didn't move his feet. He just turned his head and looked left and right. Then, facing a direction, he suddenly said, "Are you waiting for me?" A little outer sect disciple, your senses are quite sharp. In the direction that Xianxia was facing, suddenly an erratic voice came out. Someone used all the goods on your body and 10 pounds of low-grade spirit stones to buy your life. When you get to the netherworld, don't make a mistake with your enemy. You're not professional at all. Xianxia suddenly sneered, "You can't say it like that." Then how should I say it professionally? The person hidden in the darkness didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he curiously asked Xianxia, "I always felt that my words weren't powerful enough. Maybe you can help me change them to sound better." Professional words should be like this. A smile appeared on Xianxia's face. He took a step forward and said, "Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. You and I have no grievances in the past, and there is no hatred in the recent days. Today I will take your life. If you want to blame someone, blame your greed and your employer. I'm sorry for offending you." Chapter 51. Bang! Following Xianxia's words, a pyroblast talisman exploded in front of Xianxia. This was the most powerful fire attribute talisman that Xianxia could currently create. After being nourished by the universe treasure fostering technique, it exploded with a loud bang. The sound wasn't loud, but it directly enveloped the ground in a radius of a few dozen feet. A figure flashed and disappeared, as if it had been engulfed by the power of the pyroblast talisman. At the same time, there was a cry of alarm and a miserable shriek, as well as the scene of a figure struggling in the sea of fire. "Impossible, how did you know my position?" A horrified voice came out from the sea of fire. It seemed that the person had been seriously injured by Xianxia's pyroblast talisman, and the voice was full of pain. "Because your lousy illusory formation can't shake my mind or affect my senses at all." Xianxia smiled coldly, then suddenly turned around and swung his fist. A figure that had just appeared sneakily behind him was suddenly hit by Xianxia's fist. It was as if the figure was sitting on a roller coaster, continuously flipping in the air a few times, then heavily fell to the ground. Immediately after, it disappeared from the ground, as if it had suddenly melted into the background. After this blow, the figure in the sea of fire also disappeared in an instant. There were no more miserable shrieks. Apart from the sound of the flames after the pyroblast talisman exploded, there were no other sounds. Xianxia wasn't arrogant enough to think that his one punch could end the opponent's life. At least, under his heavy punch, the opponent was still able to quickly escape. This already showed that the opponent's realm was much higher than Shinda's. In Yang Chen's opinion, the opponent was at least at the 6th stage of qi cultivation. Not coming out? Yang Chen looked around and suddenly asked, "If you don't come out, I'm going to leave." The hidden person's ethereal voice sounded again, and it was hard to tell where exactly it came from. Why don't you show me?" Yang Chen was too lazy to care about the opponent's contempt. He only took large strides forward, not even looking at his surroundings. The scenery kept changing as Yang Chen strode forward. At this moment, after discovering that Yang Chen was not confused by the previous illusion, the attacker no longer dared to be careless and activated the illusion array with all his might. This was a real formation, unlike He Lian's illusory talisman. Its power was incomparable. Even with Yang Chen's powerful spiritual consciousness, he was only able to avoid being confused by the illusions. Therefore, the 2 consecutive attacks basically did not miss. It was just that the other party had used the convenience of the formation to replace himself with an illusion to escape. In front of Yang Chen's eyes, there was a large sea of fire hell. In the darkness before dawn, the sea of fire illuminated everything around, and the enemy was hidden in the sea of fire, waiting for the opportunity to move. Facing the sea of fire, Yang Chen sneered and stepped forward, stepping into the raging flames. Boom! The violent flames flew up, bringing a scorching aura, sweeping towards Yang Chen. This time, the attack was not an illusion. Instead, it was a real attack that was added to the illusion. However, the sky full of flames came to Yang Chen's side. Suddenly a white light flashed, a long sound was heard, and a white mist surrounded Yang Chen. It was Yang Chen who launched the frost talisman in time. The cold air emitted by the frost talisman of the water attribute quickly extinguished the flame, and even the power was not reduced. The surrounding ground was also frozen, forming a piece of white frost. In the white frost, a light flashed, and Yang Chen's spiritual consciousness immediately locked onto it. The other party's image disappeared almost instantly, but Yang Chen's hands were not slow. Together with a few improved 15-ton talismans, it directly covered the entire area. 15-ton talismans were the easiest to make for the earth attribute magic power, but the power of Yang Chen's 15-ton talismans was also extraordinary. The enemy hidden in the illusion array relied on the combination of fast and unparalleled movement techniques and illusions to hide themselves and attack the enemy. The 15-ton talismans released by Yang Chen covered a large area. Even if the hidden enemy's movement technique was fast, it was inevitable that he would be affected, and his movement technique would immediately slow down. In just a moment, the enemy immediately mobilized his magic power and broke the influence of the 15-ton talismans. But for Yang Chen, this moment was enough to lock onto him with spiritual consciousness. Whoosh! The other party finally took out a killer move. A yellow light appeared in the scope of Yang Chen's spiritual consciousness, flying towards Yang Chen at a high speed, but there was no sound of wind, only a yellow electric light. Ding! The yellow light directly hit the front of Yang Chen, making a crisp sound. On Yang Chen's body, a faint outline of a set of armor appeared. The yellow light could not penetrate the light, and could only return without success. Armor talisman? The hidden enemy almost gnashed his teeth. You're just a first-layer qi refining disciple, where did you get so many talismans? In his mind, a first-layer qi refining disciple plus 5 third-layer qi refining slaves, as long as they entered his illusion array, it would be impossible for them to escape. Right now, the 5 third-layer qi refining slaves were indeed trapped in the illusion array, but he thought that the easiest person to deal with was the main character, but now he was in such a difficult situation that even his talisman attack was useless. The yellow light in his hand was originally a talisman sword that he bought at a high price in the marketplace by chance. Its attack speed was extremely fast, but its destructive power was relatively not too strong. But this was already the most powerful attack he could take out, but it was easily blocked by Yang Chen's armor talisman. What kind of armor talisman could be so powerful? This talisman sword was refined by a peak qi refining person, but it could not break the armor talisman used by a first-layer chi refining guy like Yang Qin. It was simply the biggest joke in the world. At the same time that he was surprised, the assassin was also a little afraid. To be able to refine such a powerful armor talisman, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Once he thought that this kid was likely to have some big character supporting him, he felt that this trip was a bit of a waste, and he shouldn't have accepted so few spirit stones. But now the arrow on the bow had to be fired, and he couldn't back out. He could only wait until he ended Yang Chen's life, and then see if he could find a new employer to negotiate the price. Although Yang Chen's armor talisman was powerful, it was not Yang Chen's own power. Once the mana on the talisman disappeared, it would naturally be useless. But a talisman weapon was different. When it was used, it needed to be supported by the user's own mana. The assassin completely believed that he could hold on until the moment Yang Chen could no longer hold on. But the assassin's good plan completely did not expect that Yang Chen's divine sense had already locked onto his position. After blocking the talisman sword's attack, there were already 5 golden on talismans in Yang Chen's hand. With a wave of his hand, 5 golden lights like sharp swords flew towards the hidden assassin. Chapter 52. The assassin did not expect Yang Chen to have this kind of attack. Although he was surprised, he had no choice but to dodge. The golden on talisman was an offensive talisman that was similar to the sword aura. Once hit, it was no small matter. The assassin had already discovered from Yang Chen's previous attacks that the power of the talisman in Yang Chen's hands was extremely great. He did not dare to take it head-on. His body flashed and he wanted to dodge. However, Yang Chen's 5 golden on were very well coordinated. They actually completely sealed off the cliff behind him. In a flash, the assassin could only rush towards Yang Chen's direction. In his haste, he did not realize how Yang Chen's golden on could so accurately locate his position. Yang Chen was waiting for this moment. Taking advantage of the assassin's forward momentum, he also rushed forward. A shocking murderous aura suddenly exploded and collided with the rapidly approaching assassin. Even though he was an assassin, he was frightened to death by Yang Chen's murderous aura. At this moment, it was as if he was suddenly facing a death god from the 18th level of hell. Even his limbs did not listen to his commands for a short period of time. At this moment, even if it was only a blink of an eye, it was enough for Yang Chen, who had already rushed in front of the assassin. As he rushed forward, Yang Chen had already taken out the ghost head saber from his merit ring and swung it in front of the assassin. The ghost head saber slashed across the assassin's neck without any obstruction. Even though the assassin was already at Chi training level 6, even though the assassin did not forget to use Fa Li to protect himself, after Yang Chen deliberately carved a few sharpening talismans on the blade, the ghost head saber had almost been upgraded to a practitioner weapon. Chi, blood shot up into the sky, spurting high into the air from the headless neck. However, Yang Chen had already turned to the side. Not a single drop of blood splashed on his body. From the moment he swung the saber to the moment he withdrew it, it was only a blink of an eye. A dignified Chi training level 6 assassin was already beheaded. Although the assassin was dead, the illusory array did not disappear. Yang Chen was still in the illusory array. Standing in the same place, Yang Chen carefully scanned the surroundings. After confirming that there was only one assassin, he calculated the position and walked to a certain position. Although the effect of this illusory array was good, in the eyes of Yang Chen, it was not a very brilliant thing. With his eyes as a great principal golden immortal, he quickly discovered the location of the eye of the formation. This time, he reversed the yin-yang of the 5 elements according to the principle. At the position of the formation, he began to use the formation of the 5 elements of. Even though of Chen was only Chi training level 1, he of Yang of the formation of Yang of, and Yang, he 2 to the formation 2 to the formation was 2 to Yang of the formation was Yang, Li to say, Chen, Chi Yang. In the comma of Li, Thidi, 2 of the formation to be. With the loss of the magic power, the formation immediately lost its effect. The scenery in front of him changed and turned into a familiar mountain road. The servant who led the way, Xinda, Gukun, Helian, and Yuanting were all standing in the same place, with a vigilant posture. Suddenly seeing everyone, the 5 servants were shocked. Then, they saw Yang Chen's figure and the decapitated corpse. Shenda and the other 3 people breathed a sigh of relief. The servant who led the way looked at Yang Chen as if he saw a monster. The situation in front of them almost did not need to be asked. At a glance, they could see that someone wanted to kill Yang Chen and them. However, the assassin was killed by Yang Chen, and at the same time, the illusory array was also broken. The assassin's cosmos bag was still on the waist of the corpse. Under the gaze of the 5 people, Yang Chen untied it, opened it, and looked at it. He picked out a few pieces of jade slips and a few pieces of spirit stones, and then threw the cosmos bag to Helian, who was the closest to him. Helian took the cosmos bag in amazement. She had not figured out what was going on. However, Yang Chen had already taken a few pieces of jade slips and checked them with his divine sense. After searching a few pieces, he gave one of them to Helian. This is the guy's formation and experience in using the illusory array. It will be of some help to you. Take it. In the cosmos bag, there are a few small things for setting up formations. They are yours. As for the rest, the 4 of you can divide it. The servant who led the way was stunned and envious as he watched Yang Chen throw the cosmos bag of a master of the 6th level of the Qi refining realm to his servant as if there was nothing in it. A huge wave was set off in his heart. The servant vaguely recognized the identity of the assassin from a certain mark on the corpse. It seemed that he was a rogue cultivator near Meiqing Mountain. He also had some dealings with the people of Chunyang Palace. He knew the strength of the 6th level of the Qi refining realm. He also knew that the guy had obtained a good practitioner weapon a few years ago. He regarded it as a treasure and was unwilling to show it to others. Without thinking, he knew that the practitioner weapon was definitely in the cosmos bag. Yang Chen didn't even blink and gave the item of a master of the 6th level of the Qi refining realm to the servant. This generosity made the servant's heart ache. Just as he was feeling envious, Yang Chen walked over and handed over the spirit stones he had just taken from the cosmos bag. It's been hard on you to lead the way. This is a small token of my appreciation. The servant hastily received it in fear and trepidation. He suddenly felt strange. Why did he feel this way when facing an outer sect disciple of the 1st level of the Qi refining realm? It was as if his heart was filled with respect. Could it be because he killed the assassin of the 6th level? Or was it because he was generous to his servant? This delay lasted for more than 6 hours, and the sky was already bright. Everyone hastily disposed of the assassin's corpse. After resting for a while, they quickly continued on their way. At the entrance of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, Sun Haijing was gazing in the direction of the mountain pass. That was the only way to get from the elegant post villa to here. Calculating the time that Yang Chen left, he should have arrived by now. However, the mountain pass was empty without a single person passing by. After waiting for a full 4 hours, there was no movement. Sun Haijing couldn't help but be secretly happy. After waiting for such a long time, Yang Chen still hadn't arrived. He must have been killed on the way. 10 kilograms of low-grade spirit stones for the life of a hateful guy. This deal was really too worth it. Although he was happy, Sun Haijing's face showed an anxious expression. He continuously muttered to himself, "Why isn't he here yet? Why isn't he here yet?" Occasionally, people would pass by and overhear his words. They really thought that he was worried about his new junior brother and was burning with impatience. The longer he waited, the happier Sun Haijing felt. There were already many people who saw his worried appearance and thought about his junior brother. It should be enough. Just when he felt that there was no need to keep pretending to wait, a few figures suddenly appeared from the mountain pass. The one in the middle was the one that he couldn't forget. Even if he died, he wanted to burn his bones and scatter his ashes, Yang Chen. Chapter 53. The instant he saw Yang Chen's figure, Sun Haijing's expression was as if he'd been kicked in the face right when he was in the midst of bliss. It was brilliant. Inside Meiqing Mountain, on the road from Yixiu Villa to 9 Earth Villa, a wandering cultivator had unexpectedly attacked an outer sect disciple of Chunyang Palace. Moreover, the people involved were a servant of 9 Earth Villa and 4 servants of Ixio Villa. There was almost no need to ask about this matter. This matter would absolutely cause the entire Chunyang Palace to be furious. It could be imagined that all the wandering cultivators within a 1,000-mile radius would absolutely be investigated by Chunyang Palace in a frenzy. Although Sun Haijing had carefully changed his appearance when he came into contact with the 6th-level Qi refining wandering cultivator, with such a targeted target, people would definitely suspect him and Chu Heng. When the time came, once the matter was exposed, Chu Heng would absolutely mercilessly push all the blame onto Sun Haijing. Thinking of this, Sun Haijing felt as if he'd fallen into an icy hole. He never would have thought that a 6th-level Qi refining wandering cultivator wouldn't be able to defeat a 1st-level Qi refining guy. Even if he had 5 3rd-level Qi refining servants by his side, they still wouldn't be a match for a 6th-level Qi refining expert. The difference of 5 levels wasn't just a difference of 3 to 500 kilograms of strength. It was simply the difference between life and death. There was still some distance from the mountain pass to here. Sun Haijing was like a rabbit that had been shot by an arrow as he madly ran back to 9 Earth Villa and reported to Chu Heng. "Calm down. Don't panic." Chu Heng glared at the panicking Sun Haijing and snorted coldly, "That person is already dead. Empty words have no proof. What are you afraid of?" With Chu Heng's reminder, Sun Haijing was finally able to maintain a normal posture. At least after Yang Chen entered 9 Earth Villa, he didn't reveal any flaws. However, the gaze he used to look at Yang Chen was filled with resentment. Everyone could understand this point. What was unexpected was that after this stimulation, Sun Haijing, who had already reached the peak of 3rd-level Qi refining, very quickly went into seclusion and began to break through to the 4th-level Qi refining. Moreover, according to Chu Heng's judgment, it was very likely that Sun Haijing would successfully advance this time. Who dares to attack the disciples of Chunyang Palace in Meiqing Mountain? After getting the news that Yang Chen and his party were attacked, the senior officials of Chunyang Palace began to get angry. Although a few Yuanying stage ancestors did not move, but a few Jiedon stage masters had already begun to roar. No matter which sect it was, if their own disciples were attacked by outsiders, they would not have a good temper. Everyone was furious. The law enforcement hall went out, led by a Jiedon stage master, and began to investigate frantically within 1,000 miles of Meiqing Mountain. The rogue cultivators within the area all looked as if they had lost their parents. They frowned all day long and faced the anger of Chunyang Palace. That assassin used an illusion array? Du Qian and Yang Chen had long been familiar with each other, and there was no lack of talking and paving the way for Yang Chen in the law enforcement hall. Naturally, the task of finding first-hand information from Yang Chen fell on his head. Now, Yang Chen was sitting opposite Du Qian, and Yang Chen's 4 servants and the leading servant of 9 Earth Mountain Villa were standing aside. In front of Du Qian, there was also a Qiankuan bag. Du Qian was looking through the things in the Qiankuan bag one by one. The Qiankuan bag was the assassin's thing. In addition to the crystal stones, there were many things inside, including the jade slips that Yang Chen took away and the things that Shenda and the other 3 had received. All of them were here. If Du Qian wanted to investigate, he naturally had to find clues from every item. Sitting next to Du Qian was Chu Heng, the disciple of 9 Earth Mountain Villa. This time, he was just listening to the investigation of Du Qian and did not say a word. Looking at Yang Chen, there was always an inexplicable gaze. He used the illusory formation of a practitioner weapon. Even people of the 8th level of Qi refinement higher than him would be confused. "Little brother, how did you get out?" It was really easy for Chunyang Palace to find the identity of a loose cultivator from the foot of the mountain. Du Qian now also knew that guy's identity. At the same time, from the things he left behind, he also discovered his cultivation and how powerful he was. This was also something that Du Qian could not understand. 4 Qi refinement 3rd level and 1 Qi refinement 4th level servants were confused, but Yang Chen, an outer sect disciple with the lowest cultivation, Qi refinement 1st level, was completely unaffected. "I am an executioner. My killing intent overflows. Very few things that are charming can shake my mind. Yang Chen smiled and said very casually, if not for this killing intent, I might not have been able to escape. Yang Chen spoke casually, but Shenda and the others did not dare to have such an attitude. Shenda's cultivation was the highest, and he was the first to speak. He recalled the situation at that time. There was indeed a killing intent that filled the sky. I did not expect young master's killing intent. The other servants also confirmed Yang Chen's words. Since Yang Chen was not affected by the illusory formation, it was not impossible for him to kill a Qi refinement 6th level guy. Moreover, the killer's corpse had already been found. It was a clean cut, obviously the method of an executioner. The killer was also not a body refinement expert. With the neck against the knife, the result was self-evident. Little brother, you actually have this move? Not bad. Du Qian's eyes lit up, overflowing with killing intent. He was not affected by the illusory formation. The more he thought about it, the brighter his eyes became, but no one knew what he had thought of. How many people have you killed to condense this kind of killing intent? Aren't you afraid that the heavens will not tolerate it? If Chu Heng had always been biased against Yang Chen, now he already had the intention to kill. Chu Heng would definitely refute words that praised Yang Chen. We, the disciples of Chunyang Palace, do not have murderous stars like you. Junior brother Chu. Du Qian's face immediately darkened, and he said slowly, you want to say that the disciples of the law enforcement hall are all evil, is that what you mean? Is this your idea alone, junior brother Chu, or the idea of the entire Bright Moon Palace? Even if Chu Heng had 10 times the courage, he would not dare to speak ill of the law enforcement hall in his own sect. Just now, he only wanted to suppress Yang Chen, but he did not expect to include Du Qian beside him. Senior brother Du. Chu Heng turned pale with fright. If the people of the law enforcement hall knew that it was him who said this, he would probably not have a good ending in this life. He hurriedly explained, I am talking about Yang Chen. He has killed so many people without cultivating, and his killing intent is probably not a blessing of cultivation. He would not dare to insinuate the law enforcement hall. As long as he does not kill people, what does it matter how many he kills? Du Qian snorted again and did not pursue the matter, but it also made Chu Heng careful, not daring to say anything excessive. Killing intent protective formation, not affected by the illusory formation. Du Qian repeated, and a crazy idea suddenly appeared in his mind. If I let him, an outer sect disciple at the first layer of Qi practitioner, walk the heaven stairway, will it make the people from other sects go crazy? Chapter 54. As soon as this thought appeared, Du Qian couldn't hold back his thoughts anymore. He could already see the dumbstruck expressions of a large group of experts. Thinking of this, Du Qian couldn't help but laugh out loud. Chu Heng frowned as he watched Du Qian laugh so presumptuously in front of him. After thinking about it, he decided to endure it. Although their statuses were about the same, Du Qian was currently investigating the attack on Yang Chen. If Du Qian insisted on pursuing him, it wouldn't be good. Junior brother Chu, since little brother Yang has officially become an outer sect disciple, then you don't have to mention anything from before. Du Qian boldly threw down these words. In the future, little brother Yang's cultivation in 9 Earth Mountain Villa will need more pointers. Du Qian's request wasn't excessive at all. Chu Heng was a training disciple and Yang Chen was an outer sect disciple, so he had the responsibility of teaching. No matter how much Chu Heng disliked Yang Chen, he could only nod. After sending Du Qian off, Chu Heng's expression immediately changed. He faced Yang Chen and snorted coldly, Yang Chen, it's still the same. Since you won against a 3rd-layer disciple, then you will receive the treatment of a 3rd-layer disciple. However, you can try and see if you can find someone else to test you in 9 Earth Mountain Villa. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. At this point, Chu Heng's body leaned forward slightly. He didn't even care that Xinda and the other 3 servants were behind Yang Chen and impudently said, however, I can't guarantee that the pointers you exchange for with contribution points will be correct. With that, he didn't care about Yang Chen's attitude. He laughed loudly and walked out, minding his own business. With a flash, he disappeared without a trace. Shenda and the others naturally heard Chu Heng's words and looked at Yang Chen with a layer of worry. If Yang Chen couldn't receive personal pointers from a training disciple, then wouldn't that mean that many of his cultivation problems couldn't be solved? At least in terms of cultivation speed, he would fall far behind. When Yang Chen heard Chu Heng's words, he really wanted to roll his eyes a few times. I'm a dignified, perfected golden immortal. Why would I need the guidance of a foundation establishment disciple? Even though he was a veteran, he couldn't help but shake his head and sigh at Chu Heng's clown-like performance. This sigh, when stopped in the ears of the 4 servants behind him, had a different feeling. However, Yang Chen's previous performance still gave them a lot of confidence. Since he could give pointers to Sheng Guanfeng and Wang Yuan, maybe the foundation building stage was not a bottleneck at all. All he needed was time. Moreover, with the 1,000-year-old mysterious yang fruit, it seemed like all the problems were no longer problems. In any case, Yang Chen finally entered the 9 Earth Mountain Villa and could be considered to have entered the ranks of the outer sect disciples of Chunyang Palace. He was one step closer to becoming a disciple of his master after reaching the foundation establishment stage. The scripture pavilion of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa stored all the cultivation methods and all sorts of pill refinement and artifact refining methods under foundation establishment. There were even the cultivation experiences left behind by many senior experts. As long as one was a person of Chunyang Palace, whether it was an outer sect disciple or a servant, they could enter the scripture pavilion to read. However, not everyone could enter the scripture pavilion at any time and place to read indefinitely. At this step, all the privileges were related to the sect's contribution points. Only by making a corresponding contribution to the sect would the sect give corresponding treatment. Moreover, not only to read in the scripture pavilion, when asking for guidance from the disciples, contribution points were also needed. Of course, every month, official disciples had a monthly salary, all of which were paid with crystal stones. Servants, on the other hand, did not have such good treatment and only received a small amount of crystal stones. But whether it was official disciples or servants, if they wanted contribution points, they had to work for the sect to get them. There were many things needed for a sect to develop. All kinds of materials needed for alchemy and artifact refining, even crystal stones could be used to exchange for contribution points with the sect. If money was not convenient, then doing hard labor for the sect, such as taking care of the medicinal garden, helping to control the fire to refine pills, purifying materials, and so on, could all earn contribution points to the sect. Yang Chen had just arrived, so naturally, his contribution points were 0. However, this was not a problem at all for Yang Chen. As long as he entered the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, it meant that he could walk freely within the sect's sphere of influence in Chunyang Palace. He would not be restricted by the Yishio Mountain Villa that could not leave the villa. There were also 1 or 2 small-scale markets in the surroundings. Unless it was a particularly rare item, if anyone below the foundation establishment stage needed anything, they could basically exchange it in the market. Yang Chen directly used the 1/2 kilogram of low-grade crystal stones that he received in the Yishio Mountain Villa to exchange for 10 contribution points. Then, he obtained the right to read in the scripture pavilion for 2 hours. Inside the scripture pavilion, there were only jade slips, not the books of the Yishio Mountain Villa. Whether it was an outer sect disciple or a servant, they had already cultivated divine sense and could directly use divine sense to read the jade slips. Jade slips were not only convenient to read, but they could also record a large amount of information. They were many times better than books. Entering the scripture pavilion, Yang Chen began to release his divine sense and looked for what he was looking for one by one. This time, what he was looking for was a jade slip of the basic understanding of alchemy. On this jade slip, the basic concepts of true alchemy and the 2 most basic recipes were recorded. What Yang Chen needed was this. With this basic understanding of alchemy, Yang Chen could openly learn the art of alchemy. Then he could openly refine some low-level medicinal pills and exchange them for more sect contribution points. With a large number of sect contribution points, Yang Chen could come into contact with more cultivation methods. his own cultivation would also increase naturally. Xianxia could not be careless. Each sect valued their own cultivation method inheritance very much. If Xianxia did not want to be treated as a spy or be killed by people with ulterior motives before becoming a disciple of his master, he had to walk a reasonable cultivation path. For the sake of his master, Xianxia could endure anything. After an hour of searching, Xianxia finally found what he wanted. Then, Xianxia shouted happily in the scripture pavilion. He even alarmed a foundation establishment disciple who was in charge of the scripture pavilion. After being reprimanded, he was chased out of the scripture pavilion. However, almost everyone knew that Xianxia had learned the jade slip of the basic understanding of alchemy. Seeing that everything was going according to his script, Xianxia finally let out a happy laugh in his own room. From now on, everything could finally be on the right path. He no longer had to worry about giving himself away. No matter how extraordinary Xianxia's performance was, in the eyes of the sect's higher-ups, he could only be a genius with great potential to be cultivated. Everyone in the sect should be rejoicing. Chapter 55. A newly promoted outer sect disciple of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, a guy at the first layer of qi condensation, was actually going to start refining pills. This news spread like wildfire, rapidly spreading throughout the entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Xianxia's great name was also quickly mentioned by everyone. However, when it was mentioned, there were two kinds of emotions. When they heard that when Xianxia entered the sect, he defeated Sun Haijing, who was at the 3rd layer of qi condensation, everyone's expression was an "oh," full of astonishment. But when she heard that Xianxia was in the 1st layer of the qi refining stage, he didn't do anything. After going to the scriptures pavilion to learn the alchemy beginner's solution, he was about to open the furnace for alchemy. The corresponding expression and tone quickly turned into qi. If a 1st layer of qi condensation can refine pills, then what are we, who have cultivated for over 10 or 20 years, doing? Regardless of whether it was official disciples or servants, they all had this kind of thought at the same time. Some even clamored out loud. Everyone couldn't help but treat this matter as a joke. How many famous pill refiners had immersed themselves in the Tao of pills for decades, centuries, or even longer? How could there be this kind of guy who overestimated his own abilities and wanted to refine pills as soon as he came up? Not to mention refining pills, being able to control the fire well and not burn a few ordinary ingredients at the 1st layer of qi condensation was already an impressive performance. Xianxia didn't listen to these rumors in the slightest. He only had Xin to make a trip to the market square and buy the cheapest pill furnace and a batch of ordinary ingredients. Even so, this purchase also completely squandered the remaining spirit stones Xianxia received from the elegant postmanor. Carrying a large pile of ingredients and a pill furnace that couldn't be any more rotten, Xianxia began his life of refining pills in seclusion. In the entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa, apart from Shenda, He Lian, and the other 3 servants, no one was optimistic about Xianxia. On the other hand, Shenda and the others had personally witnessed Xianxia's brilliant performance of easily removing the impurities of a qi-nourishing pill with his fingers, so they were extremely confident in Xianxia. However, everyone in the 9 Earth Villa, including Shenda and He Lian, was curious about what Xianxia wanted to refine. Regardless of whether it was successful or not, the ingredients Xianxia was using were all common ingredients that could be bought in the mortal world. At most, they were a bit older, but they were far from being able to provide spirit force. What kind of pill could he refine with these mortal herbs? If they could make that rotten pill cauldron smell a bit of medicine, it would be considered a complete success. This was what 99% of the people in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa thought. Of course, Chu Heng heard this news, but he didn't say anything in front of others. He only sneered in secret and secretly had a close disciple spread the news everywhere. It even reached the inner sect. Thus, an outer sect disciple who didn't want to work hard and had delusions of reaching the heavens in a single step reached the ears of many inner sect disciples. Every disciple who heard this felt extremely disdainful towards this person called Xianxia. In his own small courtyard, Xianxia opened up a room to be used as a pill room. After calling He Lian, who had some foundation in pill refining, over to help, he began to refine pills for the first time since his rebirth. The pill recipe Yang Chen chose was not one that people knew of now. Instead, it was a pill called the Qi-seeking pill that would only appear in 300 years. The medicinal ingredients used to concoct this type of pill were all common medicinal ingredients. The resulting pill would not increase the user's spiritual energy, nor would it heal any injuries. Furthermore, it was completely useless to disciples who had entered the first layer of Qi refining. But for those preparatory disciples who had just started cultivating, this pill was a kind of pill that would make them go crazy. The Qi-seeking pill, as the name suggested, was a pill that could find Qi. After taking this pill, an ordinary person's sensitivity to Qi activity would increase by several times. It was an excellent pill that could help one sense Qi. This kind of pill, of course, would not let Yang Chen waste the precious medicinal ingredients in his medicine garden. Medicinal ingredients that were more than 1,000 years old, even the most common medicinal herbs, would have extraordinary medicinal effects. Using the common medicinal ingredients bought in the market square was enough. To He Lian, Yang Chen didn't explain it so clearly. He only warned her to pay attention to her own way of controlling fire. The preparatory work had already been completed by He Lian. Now, He Lian was surrounded by piles of sorted medicinal herbs, waiting for Yang Chen's instructions. After everything was ready, Yang Chen sat on the praying mat on the ground. His hand stroked the ears of the low-grade alchemy furnace in front of him and ignited the flame. Last time he chose the fourth fire cultivation method. Naturally, what emerged from Yang Chen's hands was also the fourth fire. 2 wisps of white flame emerged from Yang Chen's hands and gathered in the center of the alchemy furnace. The 2 wisps of flame were pulled into 2 spiral-shaped filaments in the middle of the alchemy furnace. They spiraled from the edge of the alchemy furnace to the middle of the alchemy furnace. He hadn't even started the alchemy. Just this skill of controlling fire made He Lian, who was staring at him from the opposite side, give out a heartfelt admiration. In just a few days, it seemed that Yang Chen's ability to control fire had gone up a level, becoming more skillful. Because the thin fire filaments were pulled very thin, the heat of the flame could hardly be felt. One could only see a fine spiral inside the alchemy furnace. Who would have thought that it was all composed of flames? Red flower! Yang Chen suddenly shouted. He Lian didn't dare to neglect. She hurriedly threw the already measured red flower into the alchemy furnace. Red ginseng! After throwing the red flower, Yang Chen shouted again. He Lian had already been warned, so she didn't panic at all. She easily threw the red ginseng in. As soon as the 2 medicinal herbs entered the alchemy furnace, they were swept up by the spiral flame and spun along with the flame. After just 2 spins, under He Lian's gaze, they slowly turned into a medicinal liquid. These 2 medicinal herbs were all ordinary medicinal herbs. If one was not careful, they would be burnt. But at this moment, they had turned into a liquid, without any signs of being burnt. He Lian sighed in her heart. She had already grabbed another medicinal herb in her hands. She stared at the alchemy furnace, waiting for Yang Chen's instructions. As the medicinal herbs were added in, He Lian finally found an anomaly. Yang Chen seemed to deliberately control the flame into a spiral shape, so that the melted medicinal liquid could rotate along the flame. There seemed to be another way. At least He Lian was very clear that even if she knew all the formulas and dosage, without Yang Chen's unique technique, it would be impossible to refine the elixir in Yang Chen's hands. 2 hours passed quickly. During these 2 hours, the alchemy furnace's heat was controlled at a very mysterious point. This was the key to refining the Qi-seeking elixir. If it was not just right, it would be a waste with no medicinal effect. At this moment, it was time to collect the elixir. Chapter 56. Yang Chen's technique was very special, at least He Lian could not understand it. Perhaps not only He Lian, but probably any alchemy master in the mortal world would not be able to recognize Yang Chen's technique. This technique was learned by Yang Chen from the Laojun elixir scripture. Taishang Laojuan's alchemy level was almost unparalleled. Elixirs of the same quality, refined in the Laojuan's alchemy furnace, would definitely be a few grades higher than others. This was not only because of the alchemy furnace, but a large part of it was due to the Laojuan's unique technique of refining elixirs. There were many methods of refining elixirs, and this was only one of them. It was also the one that Yang Chen felt was the most suitable after thinking about it. Yang Chen had only refined this kind of elixir once in his previous life. At that time, it was to test his own fire control skills. At least he had a little understanding of this qi-nourishing elixir. Yang Chen could roughly judge what kind of technique was suitable for qi-nourishing elixir. With Yang Chen's gesture, the medicinal liquid that was rotating in the alchemy furnace suddenly began to rotate on its own, breaking into hundreds of fragments. Every fragment was rotating, then slowly turned into a circle, and then slowly condensed. In less than half a moment, it turned into a round elixir. These elixirs seemed to be held by an invisible hand and suspended in the alchemy furnace. Then the flame in Yang Chen's hand disappeared, and these elixirs immediately fell to the bottom of the alchemy furnace and gathered into a pile. Yang Chen smiled and took out the jade bottle that he had prepared long ago and put those qi-seeking elixirs into the jade bottle. Then he and He Lian each held one in their hands and observed it carefully. The refined qi-seeking elixir was round, smooth and uniform on the surface, and the average size, as if it was rubbed out one by one according to measurements. It was pleasing to look at. Unfortunately, there was no trace of medicinal aura on the elixir. It was neither like some good medicine that emitted a fragrance, nor like some inferior medicine that had a strange smell. This elixir actually did not have a trace of smell, which was really strange. If He Lian hadn't witnessed Yang Chen's success, she would have suspected that he wasn't refining medicine at all. He Lian didn't understand, but Yang Chen knew it very well. There was no smell because all the medicinal energy was contained within the pill, not leaking out at all. In terms of technique alone, this qi-seeking pill was simply perfect and impeccable. It was the first time in his life that Yang Chen had refined it to such a level, and he felt very satisfied. "Young master, what is the use of this medicine?" He Lian asked curiously. She had never heard of such a strange formula and strange technique. She knew that it was a long time before she asked. "It's useless against you and me." Yang Chen smiled and gave an answer that surprised He Lian. Qi refinement realm cultivators are useless? Since they were useless to Yang Chen and He Lian immediately thought of this range. Yang Chen nodded, answering He Lian's conjecture. Seeing Yang Chen nod, He Lian's eyes lit up. Could it be that this is a medicinal pill for Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators? Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators are also useless. Yang Chen then replied. He Lian was even more confused. Qi Refinement Realm cultivators and Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators were not useful. Could it be for Golden Core Realm cultivators? How was this possible? This was only refined with ordinary medicinal herbs. No need to guess. This is for ordinary people, for those preparatory disciples. Yang Chen directly told He Lian the answer. Hearing this answer, He Lian was suddenly a little discouraged. So many medicinal herbs were used only for preparatory disciples. Wasn't this not worth it? No hurry, take it to the medicinal hall for appraisal. Maybe there will be an unexpected surprise. Yang Chen kept it a secret and didn't say it directly, leaving He Lian guessing for a while. The medicinal hall was responsible for the sale of medicinal herbs in Chunyang Palace. In Jiurong Mountain Villa, there was also a courtyard dedicated to the service of Outer Mountain disciples. Generally, if one was willing to spend sect contribution points to buy or sell medicinal herbs through the medicinal hall, they could get a discount. And if they refined some medicinal pills and sold it to the medicinal hall, if the medicinal hall was willing to accept it, they could also exchange it for sect contribution points. You are Yang Chen? A senior brother in the medicinal hall looked up and down at Yang Chen and frowned. Seeing that Yang Chen nodded and admitted it, he didn't care if he had a friendship with Yang Chen and said earnestly, cultivation should be more down to earth. If you want to refine medicinal pills, raise your realm first. Don't waste time, otherwise it won't be good for you. Speaking of which, these words were a little deep, but Yang Chen was very happy. After all, the other party was thinking for him. His good intentions were not something Yang Chen would take lightly. "Thank you, senior brother, for your kind intentions." Yang Chen cupped his hands and thanked him. Then, he took out the jade bottle containing the qi-seeking pill and handed it to the other party. "Senior brother, help me appraise this medicinal pill. How is its effect? What pill is this?" The senior brother took the jade bottle and opened it to take a look. "It looks pretty good. What is its use?" "When I was in Yeshio Mountain Villa, I had the chance to eat a few medicinal herbs. I felt that it was useful for sensing qi, so I tried to refine some. I don't know if it worked or not, so I'll have to trouble the seniors in the medicinal hall to appraise it." Yang Chen casually made up an excuse and covered up the matter of the formula flawlessly. "I'll accept the medicine. Go back and wait for news. It will take at least 2 days to appraise the medicinal pill." The senior brother didn't say much. He had already said it, and Yang Chen had indeed refined something. It wasn't good to say that he didn't do his job properly. He just followed the medicinal hall's rules and let Yang Chen wait. As Yang Chen returned to his courtyard to cultivate and wait, there was another rumor in 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Yang Chen, this guy who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, actually took a bottle of medicinal pills refined from common medicinal herbs to the medicinal hall and asked for it to be appraised. Moreover, according to the analysis of a senior in the medicinal hall for a long time, it was completely useless for the qi condensation and foundation establishment stages. This news immediately caused a lot of gossip and ridicule. Shenda and He Lian, even if they were helping Yang Chen run errands in the villa, they were faced with a taunting expression everywhere. Occasionally, there were a few who sympathized with them. It was estimated that they sympathized with their 8 lifetimes of bad luck. They actually followed such an unreliable master like Yang Chen. Everyone was waiting to see Yang Chen make a fool of himself. Everyone also firmly believed that Yang Chen would definitely make a fool of himself this time. The medicinal hall senior was very experienced. He only needed to taste and lick any new medicine and he would be able to determine its medicinal properties in at most half a day. If he said it was ineffective for the qi condensation and foundation establishment stages, then it definitely was ineffective. However, things that were all refined with ordinary medicinal herbs, could it be prepared for the gold core stage? Just as everyone in 9 Earth Mountain Villa was waiting for Yang Chen to make a fool of himself, the medicinal hall of 9 Earth Mountain Villa welcomed a person who had never appeared here before. The current hall master of Chunyang Palace's medicinal hall, the Golden Core Stage Grand Master Zhu Chintao. Once Zhu Chintao arrived at the medicinal hall of 9 Earth Mountain Villa, he directly pulled the person in charge and hurriedly asked, "Where is Yang Chen? Where is that Yang Chen who refined the qi-seeking pill? Immediately take me to see him." Chapter 57. The hall master of the medicinal hall was a very unusual figure in Chunyang Palace. He had been studying alchemy all his life, and even his cultivation had been delayed. If it weren't for a large number of elixirs, he might not be able to enter the gold core stage. However, since he was an alchemist, such a promotion process seemed normal, relying on alchemy. Zhu Chintao was studying a difficult problem in alchemy recently in Chunyang Palace. He vaguely heard several disciples of the medicinal hall discussing a new medicine. It was said that it could not be used by cultivators, or it would not work at all after being used, which made him feel very strange. When studying a certain problem, it was appropriate to change your mind. Maybe you could suddenly think of something. Zhu Chintao was also holding such an idea, so he called the disciple of the medicinal hall over and carefully asked about this thing called qi-seeking pill. What was the point of refining an elixir that could not be used by cultivators? Zhu Chintao was puzzled, but since the elixir had been sent to be identified, Zhu Chintao must take a look and see what it was used for. When several disciples of the medicinal hall saw that the hall master came forward, they hurriedly sent the elixir over, and then explained the elixir in its entirety, including that this elixir could not be used by cultivators, and the person who refined it was an outer sect disciple of the first level of qi refining. The moment he got the elixir, Zhu Chintao could almost be sure that the raw materials of this elixir were 90%. He could judge it just by the color of the elixir. These 90% raw materials were all extremely ordinary medicinal materials, or in other words, they were simply medicinal materials that mortals would use, and there was not a single high-level medicinal material. Zhu Qiantao, who was disappointed, was about to put the qi-seeking pill back, but suddenly found something. This elixir was very rigorous, and there was no trace of medicine smell. Just this alone made Zhu Qiantao feel a little inferior. Although with his identity as a gold core stage alchemy master, using some ordinary medicinal herbs to achieve this was not a difficult thing to do. However, he knew that the little guy who refined the alchemy was only at the first layer of the qi refining stage. This was very commendable. Just looking at the method of collecting the elixir, Zhu Qiantao felt that it was necessary to study this thing called qi-seeking pill. It was impossible for such an ordinary medicinal herb to have much of an effect on Zhu Qiantao. Zhu Qiantao directly picked one and put it into his mouth. Zhu Qiantao had always believed that there was no faster way to appraise the pill than to personally taste it. Once it entered his mouth, the qi-seeking pill seemed to turn into a stream of air, quickly melting and disappearing. After that, there were no more. Zhu Qiantao stared blankly. Could this be the effect of the pill? Since this medicine was called the qi-seeking pill, there must be some meaning behind it. Zhu Qiantao pondered for a moment, as though he had thought of something. He picked up another qi-seeking pill and popped it into his mouth. The pill was still rapidly melting and disappearing in his mouth, but this time, Zhu Qiantao, who was concentrating his senses, keenly discovered that something was different. As soon as the medicinal power entered his mouth, it turned into an extremely weak stream of air that attempted to rush into his meridians. However, it was blocked by his own powerful spiritual power and immediately dissipated without a trace. However, Zhu Qiantao's eyes lit up. The feeling of the airflow rushing through his meridians was so familiar. It was just like the feeling he felt when he first started cultivating and tried to sense the flow of qi. Yes, the qi-seeking pill, no wonder it was called the qi-seeking pill. This was simply an elixir that helped those preparatory disciples find the sense of qi in the simplest way. Was it useless for cultivators? Zhu Qiantao didn't think so. As the hall master of the medicine hall, he naturally looked at the problem from a more comprehensive perspective than those ordinary disciples. He considered the interests of Chunyang Palace more. No matter how powerful a sect was, it was always composed of disciples, from the lowest preparatory disciples to the outer sect disciples, to the inner sect disciples, and even to the pro-disciples. The status of each level was higher than the previous one. However, the lowest preparatory disciples had always been the foundation of all sections. The development potential of a sect was not decided by the most powerful person in the sect, but by the lowest level preparatory disciples. Zhu Qiantao was an experienced person. Of course, he knew how difficult it was for the preparatory disciples to find the sense of qi and complete a qi circulation at the beginning. If there was this qi-seeking pill at that time, Zhu Qiantao could be sure that the time for him to become an outer sect disciple could be shortened by at least half. If the time for each preparatory disciple to reach the first level of qi refining could be shortened by half, it meant that there would be at least several times more outer sect disciples than now. A huge number of disciples also meant that the number of people who could become inner sect disciples would increase greatly. The more disciples there were, the greater the potential of the sect. After thinking about this, Zhu Qiantao took this bottle of qi-seeking pill directly to see the palace master. As the palace master, his view on this issue was naturally more sensitive, and his eyes immediately lit up. This disciple must be rewarded heavily. The palace master directly decided his attitude towards Yangqin. Also, this qi-seeking pill is listed as a secret of our Chunyang Palace. Except for you and me, the disciples, especially the disciples of your medicine hall, must not easily disclose the secret of this qi-seeking pill to outsiders. With this qi-seeking pill, within 100 years, our Chunyang Palace can definitely grow several times stronger. Speaking of this, even the palace master with Yuanian cultivation could not help but tremble. However, an outer sect disciple who was at the first level of qi refining was not worthy of the palace master's appearance. Therefore, the medicine hall master Zhu Qiantao volunteered to find Yangqin. In this, there was a little selfishness of Zhu Qintao. After tasting it himself, he basically knew what kind of medicinal materials were used in the qi-seeking pill. However, even if he, the alchemy master, used the same medicinal materials, he could not completely refine the qi-seeking pill. Strictly speaking, he did not even manage to refine a single qi-seeking pill. Even though the refined items looked similar, there was no effect at all. This made Zhu Qintao very discouraged, but at the same time, he also became abnormally excited. The medicinal materials could not be wrong, so the only thing that could be wrong was the use of medicinal materials and the special refining method, and the most likely was the refining method. At the thought that this was probably a method that Zhu Qintao had never heard of, Zhu Qintao had an urge to see Yangchen immediately and watch him refine the pill. As a result, the Nine Earth Mountain Villa was shocked to find that the legendary figure of the Pure Yang Palace, the Hall Master of the Medicinal Hall, the Jedon alchemist Zhu Qintao hurriedly rushed to the Nine Earth Mountain Villa and began to clamor to see Yangchen. Chapter 58. With the arrival of a Golden Core Grandmaster, the entire Nine Earth Mountain Villa was thrown into chaos. Who would have thought that a Golden Core Grandmaster would come to the villa, and that he wanted to see an outer sect disciple who had just joined the Nine Earth Mountain Villa? As a teaching disciple, Chu Heng could be considered half a manager of the Nine Earth Mountain Villa. He was already respectfully waiting not far away. Hearing that Zhu Qintao wanted to see Yangchen, even though he was already at the foundation establishment stage, his heart couldn't help but tremble. What reason could make a Golden Core stage alchemy grandmaster so anxious to see an outer sect disciple? Although he had doubts in his heart, Chu Heng didn't dare to express a trace of dissatisfaction on his face. He quickly ordered a disciple to find Yangchen and have him come over immediately. What a joke, a Golden Core grandmaster couldn't possibly lower himself to see an outer sect disciple, right? Yangchen was cultivating regularly. His life during this period of time was very peaceful. In the eyes of outsiders, Yangchen was only punctually meditating and cultivating for one cycle every day. Afterwards, he would have nothing to do in the villa and look around. No one knew what he was looking at. Sometimes, he would use the hard-earned sect contribution points to exchange for time to read in the scripture pavilion, squandering all the sect contribution points. In the eyes of countless people, only meditating and cultivating for one cycle every day was already lazy to the extreme. There was no outer sect disciple lazier than him. Coupled with Chu Heng's intentional or unintentional attitude, besides Yangchen's four servants, no one else would pay attention to him. Even Sun Haijing, who had just come out of seclusion, didn't have the same hatred towards Yangchen as before. First, his cultivation had advanced and his state of mind seemed to be a bit more open. Second, arguing with such a mischievous person would be beneath his status. The lazier Yangchen appeared, the less of a threat he would be in the future. No one knew that although Yangchen only did one cycle every time, in reality, it was a full cycle of the Yin-Yang 5 elements arts. Moreover, before each cycle, Yangchen always ate a piece of the profound Yang fruit. The 1,000-year profound Yang fruit's flesh contained a spirit power so powerful that it made people drool. With Yangchen's Yin-Yang 5 elements arts complementing each other, it was enough to send Yangchen's cultivation directly to the second level of qi refining within one cycle. Even so, the enormous medicinal power was still unable to be completely absorbed. But Yangchen would never be satisfied with this kind of spiritual power skyrocketing realm improvement, followed by a reversal of the 5 elements. It would quickly offset the skyrocketing spiritual power in the body, leaving only the purest part of the essence that even the 5 elements could not completely offset. This Yin and Yang 5 elements restrained each other, but it made Yangchen's cultivation base return to the first layer of qi refining. After this positive and negative Yin and Yang 5 element cycle, the spiritual power in Yangchen's body was improving at a uniform rate every day. However, Yangchen knew that this kind of improvement was all the essence of the essence. He did not even have to worry about reaching the peak of qi refining in order to build his foundation. He had to purify the impure spiritual power in his body again. Countless people were stuck at the peak of qi refining. It was precisely because in order to speed up the breakthrough to the peak of qi refining, they used a variety of methods to increase their spiritual power. This led to the spiritual power in the body being sufficient, but the quality was far from enough. But Yang Chen did not have such a problem at all. Of course, Yang Chen's external performance was that of fire attribute spiritual power. Naturally, Yang Chen would focus on the performance of fire attribute spiritual power. After thoroughly digesting the profound Yang fruit's medicinal power, Yang Chen would always control the fourth fire attribute spiritual power to deliberately reflect it, giving people a feeling of fire surrounding the body. For Yang Chen, one complete cycle of cultivation every day was already enough. Naturally, if he didn't use the profound Yang fruit, the amount of spiritual power he absorbed during cultivation was almost negligible. Yang Chen naturally wouldn't waste that kind of effort. In the eyes of outsiders, he would become a mischievous person. Blindly bitter cultivation is not the right path. Shenda and the others were naturally confused. Before, Yang Chen was not this kind of lazy person. How come he seemed to be a completely different person after arriving at the 9 Earth Mountain Villa? Regarding this, Yang Chen explained it like this. If bitter cultivation is effective, then why does the sect encourage disciples to go out on patrol, refine pills, forge weapons, and even do odd jobs in the sect in exchange for sect contribution points? Isn't it just to let the disciples relax when cultivating? Shinda, He Lian, and the others were also influenced by Yang Chen. They only cultivated 9 cycles a day. This was the limit Yang Chen told them. The rest of the time, apart from serving Yang Chen, was to do odd jobs everywhere in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa in exchange for sect contribution points. Yang Chen and his servants also became a very special few in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Zhu Chintao wanted to find Yang Chen. Naturally, there were disciples who immediately called Yang Chen over. It just so happened that Yang Chen was strolling around at this time. When he heard the summons, he hurried over. From far away, Yang Chen felt an unusual aura. It faintly revealed a monarch-like aura. Discovering this aura, Yang Chen's heart moved, but there was no abnormality on his face. He quickly followed the disciple leading the way to the medicine hall. Zhu Chintao did not deliberately completely restrain his aura, he just let it be released naturally. Despite this, the aura of a golden core grandmaster still made people involuntarily have an urge to worship. The disciples serving here all didn't dare to breathe loudly at this moment. They looked at Zhu Chintao in the middle full of respect. Yang Chen, why haven't you paid your respects to Martial Granduncle? Chu Heng's rebuke came from far away. Yang Chen didn't dare to be neglectful. He respectfully bowed to Zhu Chintao from far away. Before he could speak, Zhu Chintao's figure had already appeared in front of him. He picked up Yang Chen and asked loudly, "You are Yang Chen? Did you refine this qi-seeking pill?" "Yes, Martial Granduncle." Yang Chen knew in his previous life that Zhu Chintao was a fan of alchemy. His qi-seeking pill was precisely to attract the attention of the medicine hall. He originally planned to refine some higher-level pills to attract Zhu Chintao's attention, but he didn't expect Zhu Chintao to come so quickly. "Refine it for me to see." Zhu Chintao didn't say anything and directly let Yang Chen start refining the pill. When the people next to him heard Zhu Chintao's instructions, they were all stunned. A golden core grandmaster was so impatient. It was unbelievable. Yang Chen was startled and then smiled. "Martial Granduncle, there are too many people here, and it is not suitable to calm down and refine pills. Otherwise, let's change places." As he spoke, he glanced at Chu Heng with a smile. Obviously, the person he was talking about was Chu Heng. Chapter 59. Let's go to your pill refining room. Zhu Chintao didn't say anything else and immediately got up to leave. With his movement, how could the others still dare to stand? They all hurriedly stood up. The supervisor of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa's medicine hall immediately became anxious. He stepped forward and said hurriedly, "Martial Uncle, since it's pill refining, isn't it more appropriate to do it in the medicine hall? Besides, everyone also wants to observe junior brother Yang's pill refining techniques." It would have been better if he didn't say this reason. Once he said this, Zhu Chuntao immediately remembered the palace master's instructions. The qi-seeking pill was very important to the sect and couldn't be known by just anyone. Hearing the medicine hall supervisor's words, he directly waved his hand. Do you have the medicinal ingredients that Yang Qin uses here? Or do you have a pill furnace that he can use? With these two sentences, everyone could naturally hear that Hall Master Zhu didn't want to watch Yang Qin refine pills here at all. They could only bitterly follow behind Zhu Chuntao, planning to go see what kind of good pills Yang Chen had refined. Seeing this situation, Zhu Chuntao frowned. What? Do you all have nothing to do every day? Go busy yourselves with your own things? If you really have nothing to do, then go cultivate. Don't be lazy. With a few words of reprimand, even if everyone was stupid, they knew that Zhu Chuntao didn't want anyone to follow. At this time, the gazes that they looked at Yang Chen almost carried an emotion of extreme jealousy. This was the medicine hall's golden core grandmaster. If he was happy and casually gave a few pointers, that would be a lifetime of benefits. Unfortunately, they were not fated. Seeing this, Chu Heng didn't know what to think in his heart. He hurriedly waved at everyone and loudly instructed, "Go busy yourselves, go busy yourselves. Martial uncle, let this disciple accompany you over." What are you going to do? You're not a fire cultivator and you don't know how to refine pills. What are you going to do? Zhu Chuntao didn't care whether Chu Heng was an inner sect disciple or a training disciple. He directly retorted, "Is it that you're very carefree as a training disciple and have nothing to do every day?" Facing Zhu Chuntao's rebuke, how could Chu Heng dare to say half a word? He hurriedly bowed and left. But when he glanced at Yang Qin, his eyes were filled with unspeakable hatred. Zhu Chuntao happened to see this glance, and he was immediately very dissatisfied. What are you looking at? What? Are you jealous that an outer sect disciple knows alchemy? Why are the disciples of the Bright Moon Hall becoming more and more useless? These words were extremely heavy. How could Chu Heng dare to stay where he was? He didn't even dare to casually look and quickly fled. Even so, Zhu Chuntao still seemed to be a little unwilling to let him go. He shouted loudly behind him, "People who cultivate the Tao place the most importance on cultivating the mind and temperament. Your temperament still needs to be tempered." The guidance of a golden core stage grandmaster, who knows how many people looked forward to such a day, but Chu Heng could not be happy no matter what. Zhu Chuntao's words just now were clearly heard by the entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa. He had lost a great deal of face now. In the future, he would be looked down upon by the 9 Earth Mountain Villa's disciples. All of this was naturally counted by Chu Heng on Yang Chen's head. Yang Chen didn't care what Chu Heng thought. Since he had already attracted Zhu Chuntao's attention, he was happy to make himself even more important. After respectfully inviting Zhu Chuntao into his small courtyard, he immediately ordered He Lian to prepare the things. Shenda, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun continuously waited on the surroundings, afraid that there would be anything lacking. Only a few people were allowed to stay in the simple and crude alchemy room. Even if the other people of 9 Earth Mountain Villa were extremely curious, they didn't dare to peep in front of a golden core stage grandmaster. He Lian was already so nervous that her body was trembling. Following her master, in a short period of a month, she actually saw a golden core stage grandmaster. In the past, this kind of thing was unimaginable. At this moment, a golden core stage grandmaster was sitting in front of her. Everything was like a dream. Although she was nervous, He Lian's basic skills were still not bad. In a short while, she had already prepared all the materials that Yang Chen used to refine pills last time. She even measured the weight. Then, she took out Yang Chen's pill refining furnace from her Qingkuan bag and placed it in front of Yang Chen. "This is the pill refining furnace you used?" Looking at this extremely simple pill refining furnace, Zhu Chuntao's face couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. Relying on this kind of pill refining furnace, he could refine the qi-seeking pill. What did this mean? Could it be that Chunyang Palace would soon have another pill refining genius? However, the surprise on Zhu Chuntao's face only flashed. What he wanted to know the most was Yang Chen's pill refining technique. He had already seen the herbs and there was no difference from his analysis. There was only a slight difference in the dosage, But this difference was not enough to make Zhu Chintao unable to make the qi-seeking pill. The only thing that could explain the problem was Yang Chen's pill refining technique. In the face of a golden core stage grandmaster, Yang Chen couldn't help but become serious. He sat in the same place, holding the two handles of the pill refining furnace with both hands and began to practice. Everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. There were already two flames in Yang Chen's hands. At first glance, Zhu Chintao could conclude that Yang Chen's was just an ordinary flame of the 5 elements. There was no unique fire seed. It was normal to think about it. It would be strange if an outer sect disciple at the first level of qi refining had any strange fire seed on him. There were no traces of strange flames on the qi-seeking pill. It was obviously an ordinary fire. However, the scene of Yang Chen's next control of the flame directly made Zhu Chintao's eyes stare out. When the double helix thin flame began to rotate, he had already concentrated on the flame in the alchemy furnace, and his eyes refused to blink. The herbs were added one by one, melted, then rotated, and then slowly mixed evenly. Finally, under the control of Yang Chen's unique flame, it was directly broken into small pieces of uniform size. Then Zhu Chintao watched Yang Chen use a seemingly very ordinary pill refining technique to collect the medicinal pills that have been formed and put them into a jade bottle. From the beginning to the end, Zhu Chintao stared at Yang Chen's technique. He was fully focused and did not wander at all. He was completely observing and analyzing Yang Chen's technique until Yang Chen's alchemy ended. Taking the jade bottle that Yang Chen had put away, Zhu Chintao pinched a qi-seeking pill and sent it into his mouth. Suddenly, a cyclone that wanted to invade the meridians flashed away. Yes, this was the real qi-seeking pill. Everything happened in front of Zhu Chintao's eyes, and he couldn't have any doubts. There were no unique herbs, no mysterious alchemy furnace, and even no unique pill refining technique. The only thing that was different was Yang Chen's method of controlling the fire. That technique, even in the eyes of Zhu Chintao, a golden core stage master, was enough to be described as superb. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.